everyone, my name is itstyrenee and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As some of you may know, I announced towards the end of last year that I would be playing Final Fantasy X for the very first time, both on my Twitter and Instagram. I actually started playing this game on December 27th. Yes, I did notate what day I started and what day I finished, and I finished it on February 4th of this year. And I knew from the very beginning that I was gonna do like a sit down like essay video on it and possibly do more videos within this game and even the sequel, like with character breakdowns and unpopular opinions, basically the same thing that I do with the other games that I talk about on here on this channel. But what made me actually want to play this particular game was when a couple months back Square Enix announced that they were going to make plushies for Tidus and Yuna, and I've been collecting a lot of plushies from Square Enix from Final Fantasy VII to Kingdom Hearts. I have Kingdom Hearts up here, Final Fantasy over here, and I actually have Tidus and Yuna now. Let me actually go ahead and get them for you really quickly. Yep. So here they are. I got both of them, let's see, I want to say about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but at the time when I saw them on the site, I sat here and I asked myself, and I actually tweeted on Twitter, were these plushies my sign to play Final Fantasy X? And a lot of y'all were like, yes, play it, it's worth it, it's worth the experience, it's the best Final Fantasy ever, play it, play it, play it. And it was just filled with a whole lot of unexpected positivity insisting that I should play this game. And I actually took time to take it into consideration before actually buying the game and playing it. And I think I asked back in October. I bought the game in November on Thanksgiving weekend, and I was just gonna wait it off for like the perfect time to play the game. And towards December I had like a break from my job, like vacation, so that's when I made the announcement. I was like, hey y'all, I'm gonna play this game for the very first time, and you know, content coming soon in 2023. Little did I know what the heck I was getting into. Time flew by so fast, and here I am sharing my thoughts with you on this game. Yeah, but before I get into my essay review with you guys, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on social media. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this video essay of Final Fantasy X. So we have Yuna. Yuna is a summoner on a pilgrimage with her 6 guardians to obtain the final Aeon, which would help put the endless spiral to an end. And each temple that she goes to throughout Spira would require her to pray to obtain each Aeon. And her father was actually a summoner before she was, so like father, like daughter. And then with her personality, she is so passionate and polite. She's a little bit naive when it comes to giving people the benefit of the doubt, and she really hides her feelings a lot when it comes to being sad, but she does her best to encourage other people to stay positive, even if it means she carries the burden of others while trying to defeat sin. And my heart really feels for her. She really deserves the world and everything more. And unfortunately, with the role that she carries as a summoner, it comes with self-sacrificing, or you know, at least that's what had been traditionally throughout the years. And Tidus is actually the one to teach her that there is so much more to life than just being a hero and then dying after becoming the hero. So I'm going to try my best to be really organized with this review or essay. I don't think it's really a review because y'all know how the game is. For me, it's new, so it's kind of like a review to me in a sense, but it's an essay in regards of how I feel about certain things. I wanted to break it down to 4 parts with characters, music, gameplay, and storyline. I honestly don't know if I'm going to spoil everything. Even though, yes, this game is a little over 20 years old, I'm pretty sure there are a handful of people who watch my content who've never played this game before, but is a little bit interested on whether they should play this game or not. And then I know there are people who've played this before and wanted to know how I personally felt about certain things. So it's a little bit of a mix. So if you are someone who has never played this game before and don't want to come across spoilers, I apologize. This video may not be for you. It's okay. I will see you in the next video. I totally understand if you don't want to see spoilers. But if you want to know about every little thing I feel about this, then stay tuned for the video. Alright, let me go ahead and actually get into how I feel about everything. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and dive into characters. We have Tidus, who is the main protagonist of this game. There's always an argument about his name, whether it's Tidus or Titus. I think it's pronounced Tidus. It just looks the way how it's spelled, if that makes sense. Tidus is a better name. I don't know, Titus just sounds weird. Anyways, he is a protagonist of this game, the main one. He is also a rising blitzball player with like a playful yet childish kind of like personality who ends up getting caught up in the chaos, and eventually we dive into his fate, and it's very tragic. But sometimes just thinking about what has occurred for him in this game, it makes me forget that he's only 17 years old going through all this, but he is so flourished throughout this game. It makes me think, oh god, you're 17. I thought you were like 18, 19. I could say 20, but I don't know. But it's a lot for a teenage boy, and he is actually one of Yuna's best guardians. And I do really wish that he would like swallow his food more, like chew a little bit better before he actually swallows his food. But you know what? Hey, that's just me. You know, you gotta have all your characters flawed, and if your character does not want to chew your food all the way before they swallow and end up choking, that's a nice flaw. And then you have Orin. So Orin is technically the first guardian of Yuna's that Tidus has met, but he's actually the 5th person who joins the party. This is the 2nd time that he's been a guardian to a summoner, when he was actually the guardian to Yuna's father when he was like the summoner at the time to defeat Sin. He's incredibly strict with like a no-nonsense type of behavior, but he really knows how to carry himself. His loyalty is out of this world, and I believe everyone else, you know, everybody deserves to have a friend like Orin. I would love to have a friend, or even like a father figure like Orin. And I know I said that Tidus is Yuna's best guardian, but like Orin is too on an aspect in regards of a father figure towards both her and Tidus. He watched Tidus when he was a kid just to look after him after Jet became the final Aeon for Yu Yevon. And then Yuna, he just really wants what's best for her and just to keep her protected as a guardian. And he is like the greatest, like, I don't want to call him secondary, because he's like one of the best like Final Fantasy characters, but like on a secondary level, since he's not like a main protagonist. So, and then you have Lulu. Lulu is the 4th guardian of Yuna's that Tidus has met. Yuna's pilgrimage is actually the 2nd go around for her of being you know, just a guardian of a summoner. And Lulu turned out to be someone who I did not think she would be. I honestly thought that she was going to be like super mean. She's a little similar to Orin. Not that he's mean, but he's like very like stern and like just kind of to themselves. But really, she's just kind-hearted and intelligent. She actually grew up with Yuna and Pesed with Wakka and his brother. I'll get into Wakka in a little bit. But she is actually the former lover of Wakka's brother, which is Chepu. But he unfortunately passed away, and she's the kind of person that you think they're mean at first glance, but once you get to know them, you're like, oh, you're a very pleasant person. Then you have Wakka. Wakka is the 3rd guardian that Tidus interacts with who is of course a part of Yuna's group of guardians, but he grew up with Yuna and Lulu, and alongside Lulu, that is actually his second go around of being beside a summoner. I forgot the summoner's name that they were with before Yuna, but Lulu and Waku was a guardian to another summoner. Again, I forgot her name because my playthrough of this game for the first time was just somewhat of a blur, but like memorable at the same time. Waka is incredibly religious and devoted to the teachings of Yevon, and he is really quick to resent those that go against it, or more so the Albed. And he really hates the Albed because of his brother's death, and all of a sudden that changes. Well, not all of a sudden, but it changes once he finds out that Yuna, the little sister that he technically grew up with, is half Albed genetically. But I mean, outside of that, his bond with Tidus actually irritates Lulu, because Lulu thought that he was just holding on to the past with Chapu instead of moving forward after his death. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. And then you have Riku, who is the second guardian that Tidus meets of Yuna's, but she's actually the last one to become a part of the group of guardians. She actually identifies as an Albed, and she stands out from the rest of the guardians, and is actually respected by everyone except for none other than Waka. Yeah. As the youngest member of the group, she is very energetic, happy-go-lucky, and overall tries to maintain a positive outlook on everything that occurs. And she's not only Albed, but she is actually Yuna's cousin, who she tends to refer as Uni, which I think is the cutest thing ever. And now she has me referring to Yuna as Uni. I know I'm not referring that to her now, but like on my own time, like I'm like, oh my god, my Uni. But I just think it's the cutest thing ever. And Riku's dad's sister married Yuna's father, so that's how they're cousins. I think I just kind of confused myself a little bit while just saying that out loud, but they're cousins. And she also has a fear of thunder and lightning, which is called astrophobia. Me too, girl. Me too. Not really, but me too, girl. So another and the last guardian, you have Kamari. Kamari is the fifth guardian that Tidus meets, and is actually Yuna's parental guardian before she decides to become a summoner, as Orin requests him to look after her prior to her father's sacrifice. He is very reserved, and he doesn't talk to anyone unless he genuinely knows and trusts them. And he is actually quiet because of the shame that he carries from within his past. And he's the only guardian who's like non-human, by the way. He's a Ronzo. You can just call him like a lion or a cat, but I seriously thought of him as a mean guy, but farther out in this game, he's actually someone who's just stays to himself with guard because of how he was treated back at home. So a lot of Yuna's guardians are like self-reserved. Like half of them are self-reserved, and then half of them are kind of like peppy and cheery and talkative. And she's like, oh, calm. She's talkative too, but like she's just on the calm side. She's like the balance between like both the nonchalant and like the extroverted kind of like guardians that she has. And then you have Seymour. Seymour is the secondary antagonist and briefly a guest in a boss fight. He comes off as courteous and pleasant as a maester, not a master, a maester of Yevon to literally everyone except for Tidus and Orin. Yeah, you know what, I applaud both of them for that, because they can read people's character. We'll get into that with the story part later on, but his mindset is just believing that sin is inevitable and like it's just going to continue on like And then later on, we find out that he is not who he paints himself out to be. Woo woo, shaka shaka, whoop de doo. And he will do anything and everything to become Sin, even if that means killing his dad, marrying Yuna just to like keep people attention on the marriage, on the positive side, and then trying to kill her guardians, and then trying to kill her. I mean, I knew he was automatically the villain once he said he supported Machina, which is not really the issue, because it's not an issue for me, but like with their beliefs and teachings, it just kind of like gave it out for me. And like, spoiler, I did not like him. I don't like him at all. I don't like him. No. And then you have Jet. Jet is also an antagonist, but he's more so like a secondary as well. He is more reluctant and the father of Tidus, and he comes off as arrogant and a bully, as of what we've seen and like with Tidus's flashbacks. He was a guardian of Yuna's father as well, and a major blitzball player in Dannerkin, and he's an alcoholic, and he was in fact a very toxic parent to Tidus, being emotionally and verbally abusive. He vanished away for a really long time. Good for him. Sorry, Tidus. And then we discover where he really was, and we find out that he became Braska's final Aeon after sacrificing himself for Yuna's father. Should have stayed there, to be honest, but you know. Now, with these characters, I think everyone is written very well. I feel like everyone that I had listed off has like enough screen time or depth for us to not only understand the characters for who they are, but it allows you to have a solid opinion on whether you like them, you love them, you hate them, or you just simply feel in the middle about them. And I was thinking about doing a full-on ranking about how I feel about these characters, but I feel like it would be somewhat unfair because I have not played the sequel, and I just feel like I wouldn't do them justice if I'm like, oh, this da-da-da-da-da, very at the bottom, da-da-da-da-da, very at the top. So I will just say this, that my top favorite characters is Yuna for certain, because that is my baby. My least faves are Seymour and Jet, because I almost put up a middle finger, but I realized there might be kids watching, so we're not going to do that. Tidus and Yuna, they are like my babies. I wish things honestly would have went way better for them than what had occurred. I genuinely do not understand the hate for Tidus, because I've seen a lot of people say that he was abusive to Yuna and whiny. First of all, he's 17, so of course he's going to come off as childish and like whiny. When you're 17, you're not that mature. I was 17 like 5-6 years ago, but like, come on now, please, come on. And then we see him definitely mature at the end, but I feel like you would be hurt too if your dad was like abusive to you verbally and emotionally, and then left you with your mother, who was left heartbroken, and she died from heartbreak. And then you find out that your dad was like the world's biggest threat, and then you find out that you're not really real. I mean, yeah, I'd probably throw a temper tantrum too. Like, I would probably be screaming and yelling off the top of my head and going insane like the way he did in a couple of cutscenes. But like, he's not a bad protagonist. I'm not gonna really full on do a whole video essay. I might do a full essay on just him and his character and explaining like why he's not a bad protagonist. Anyways, whatever. Auron is truly Yuna's best guardian. There's really no need to argue about that. Seymour is definitely at the bottom of my list because of the way he really tested my patience when it comes to making Yuna and the rest of her guardians like traitors, when he was the one with the devious plan, and he just refused to give up. Like, oh my god, like, his backstory does not even make me feel bad for him, honestly. But I can't really be too mad because that really shows how to write a villain. I'm really glad that they, or I hope not at least, because I have not played the sequel, but from what I've seen here so far, I'm really glad that they didn't try to pull the whole redemption arc route towards the end. And no, like, he's a villain for a reason. Keep him as a villain. Villains don't need a redemption arc sometimes people need to be bad. Anyways, no, I'm gonna get into the stress that he put me through the past few months later on, but he at the bottom of his list. I don't know who's worse, him or Seymour's daddy, Tidus's daddy. Jet is the full-on definition of toxic parenting. Toxic parenting is an absolute no for me, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, hey, if Tidus, made up with him and forgive him, I guess he gets a pass. But like, they at a tie when it comes to being the worst character. Not worse when it comes to like writing and like making them an interesting character. Just like the way they, I just no. Those two are at the bottom for me. Yuna's at the very top. That's my baby. That's my world. You can't tell me otherwise. Tidus deserves better as well. Full on. I really do not want to mispronounce their names, but the composers for this soundtrack for the game did such a phenomenal job. I believe when it comes to like movies, television, and video games, that music plays a huge part to what I'm seeing on the screen. And I always find myself just viewing this scene in any of those forms of entertainment, and just my focus sometimes tends to shift on from what's actually going on to like the music itself. And then I'm like, oh my god, I gotta find this soundtrack on YouTube and figure out what's the name of the track. And then I just become obsessed and just blasting my headphones with it. So for this game in particular, the music has like a mixture of tracks where one song can be catchy and fun, and the other one can be filled with tension and seriousness, and then the other one can be shattering and emotional. And with the games I play, I do enjoy quirky sounds, but I find myself to be more invested in soundtracks that can be heard in serious scenarios. And I indeed received both of those tones with this game. With the remastered version of this game, you get two options when it comes to the soundtrack. You can decide whether you want to listen to the original or the remastered soundtrack. I personally chose the remastered because I wanted to get a 2022-2023 kind of feel to it while playing a game that came out in 2001, And if you were looking for a review in comparison of the original and the remastered, I unfortunately cannot give that to you. However, I will say that both versions of the battle theme, I must say, are just incredible. But there is a major difference between the two, or maybe just a major difference within the music in general. But from what I hear with the original battle theme, it has like an 8-bit flow to it, considering that this game did come out in 2001, whereas the remastered version, I think this game was remastered in either 2013 or 2014. I might be mistaken, but it does have a bit more of an accurate sound to today's music in gaming. While there are tracks that stand out from being heard only like in particular cutscenes or like parts of the games that you're like in at that moment, there are tracks that are used more than once in multiple scenes that are really fitting to what is shown on the screen, or to say, at that moment of whatever you're doing with like the pause, well, not the pause, but like upgrading the characters and such. So my favorite tracks in this game is definitely the battle theme, the victory fanfare, calm before storm, the summoning, and enemy attack. Now, I don't particularly have a least favorite track because there's no bad songs on here, but I do find myself listening to those songs that I just listed off more than the others. But I will say that Game Over, The Trials, enemy attack and the ending theme are just very, very triggering to me in the sense of the stress and the emotional pain that I have endured in particular scenarios. If you know, you know. So, funny story, this is actually the very first turn-based, God, I can't talk today. This is the first turn-based Japanese role-playing game I've ever played in my entire life. So the combat system was very interesting to me, to say the least. I will say that turn-based, it does save a lot of stress in regards of planning to attack right away and having to multitask. And then like if I have to use the restroom, I don't have to pause my game. I can just like let it just sit there, go to the restroom, and then just come back and then make my next move. But it really feels like playing chess as well. Like you have to be really smart, and it comes with a lot of critical thinking, and I clearly lack critical thinking because I don't know how many times I lost in a boss fight, like multiple times, where like certain things is just common sense, but like when you're in that moment you think way too hard to like just do something when really it could be so simple. So for me, it was from Crawler and Negator to the too many gosh darn Seymour themes, Evray, Spectral Keeper, Unalesca, and Braska Spinal Aeon. I just had a hard time with those boss fights, and I honestly thought I was going to drop this game because of how difficult everything was. And it was so embarrassing to the point that I will admit that I even went on to IGN and YouTube, and I even asked some of y'all like on Twitter and Instagram for advice on like how to get past certain things. And most of the time I would go back and forth to do like small encounters just to level up so I can beat the boss fights that I just mentioned. Now, if you were to ask me like what were my favorite boss fights in this game, I honestly have no clue, but I think the one that comes to the top of my head would probably be Sanctuary Keeper. I gave myself so much anxiety with that one because of my PTSD from seeing the words "game over" on my screen numerous times, but it just took me one time to get past it, and I was like, oh. And I was just in so much relief that it took me just that one time to get past it, and it's very easy. But you know what I like about video games? Easy stuff, because I feel like video games are supposed to be fun and not stressful, and I like the easy route when it comes to video games. Yeah, best believe I do put my games on easy mode. I don't even think, not that I remember that this game had like that option, but you know, you get the point. Let me tell you something about the Spirit Grid though. That Spirit Grid was the most complicated thing I've ever seen for leveling up my party in a video game. I was so lost until there was a particular fight that required me to have a specific ability for one character, and then everything just clicked and made sense to me. And I do wish that I did pick up on everything quicker, because I feel like my first playthrough wouldn't have been as long as it was if I had grasped on everything so easily. But I believe the Spirit Grid was like one of those complicated things for a lot of first time players. A few fights did require me to do, once again, a lot of leveling up before facing them, and I will be sure to focus on leveling up if I ever do play like a turn-based game again in the future. That's something I will definitely like notate and keep in mind just for myself, but that's advice that I'll personally give you guys as well if you ever played a turn-based game in the future for like the very first time in this day and age. You know, I think just like most of us, my strongest member in my party was Orin with Yuna, and like a tie between like Tidus and Lulu following behind. Literally, Orin can just breathe at an opponent, and then the enemy is just... And Yuna is incredibly helpful with the Aeons, and I am kind of upset with myself because I did not take advantage of them in the way that I should have. I hope I pronounce this correctly, but Bahamut and Yojimbo are easily my favorites, and I kind of struggled with Tidus, and I think it's mainly because I used everybody except for him until like the middle of the game. Like I started to put him out on the floor more. Lulu definitely helped me with the dark magic for almost anything. I thought I had something going on with Waka and Kimari in the beginning, but they ended up being like a last resort kind of thing for me. I'm like in the middle with Riku in regards of like stealing and then mixing different items. It could really be a hit or miss because I did not collect everything in the world of that game to like mix anything. So I was just like mixing random stuff and I did not know what the outcome would be. And Yuna and Riku's overdrives are my favorite. Everybody else just gives me anxiety. I remember just like my hands sweating and like shaking trying to like hit the right. Everybody, no, Yuna and Riku's overdrives were very simple. I didn't have to stress. I'm like, okay, boom, there, cool. Everybody else give me anxiety, like move the controller really fast, press these buttons really fast, make sure you get in the middle. No, don't let me get started with these trials. These trials made me realize my strong disliking for puzzles. I did not know how I felt about puzzles beforehand, but after playing this game, now the first temple in Dojoje was very simple. The other ones made me feel bad about anybody who played this game in the early 2000s, because the way I just YouTubed everything on here when it came to them temples, I don't know if my mind is like on some first grade level stuff, but I like it when my games are easy and simple. I just kind of like zoned out because I just thought about what I just went through with no. Okay, so I do understand that this game is a remaster on PS4. Things are advanced compared to the original. Is that correct? For anybody who's played the original and played the remaster. So if this is a remaster, my question is, how come I can't skip any cutscenes? And I literally lost my mind every time I had to like go up a boss that I like lost to, and I just could not skip a cutscene at all for no reason. Every time I like went up to encounter them, I just scrolled on my phone until it was time to start. I'm not going to drag it out, but if this game is a remaster, then it needs to act like a remaster. Outside of like the new melodies within the tracks and the higher graphics, the skippable cutscenes would really make a huge difference within the entire experience. Yeah. But on the other side, we'll go ahead and get into Blitzball. And you know, I'm not big on sports or whatever, but I don't know what happened the first time I played Blitzball, like in the main game for the tournament that Tidus and Waka were in. There were two options to control your characters. You can do it automatically or you can do it on your own. Now I did it automatically because it was recommended as a first time player to do it automatically. And let me tell you something, I am horrible. I am horrible with Blitzball. And I know for a fact that if Blitzball was a real sport, I would not make it into the leagues. Yeah, I could have been in the NBA, but my mama put perm on my hair when I was little, so that wasn't going to work. Yeah. So, was there a Chocobo racing mini game? Or like a mini game for like all of them of some sort, like finding all of them? If so, I did not play that. That's for certain. I think I've made it very clear on my channel that I'm not big on mini games unless it's mandatory for me to play mini games. The decoding for the language of the Albed stressed me out as soon as I saw it. I said nope. I didn't even bother trying to decode every game once I came across it. Nope. Listen, I refuse to be stressed when I am playing a video game. I am somehow stressed for it as it is, because it's the storyline. It's a lot of information to take in, but we'll dive into that later. And then the gameplay. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I did to deserve this. So, summarizing everything story-wise, this story is about a boy who finds himself in a different world, just wanting to go back home to what he was used to, and he ends up on a journey with this summoner to save the world from an endless cycle of destruction, while learning the truth about not only his father's disappearance, but with his own identity. And this story is not only about adventure, but it's about sacrifices, discovery, and love for those around you. And this is actually my second main title Final Fantasy game that I've ever experienced, despite the stress that it put me through. I will say that this game is absolutely phenomenal and heart-wrenching, to say the least. Now, I do actually want to briefly touch on how a lot of people were saying that the direction of the voice acting wasn't the best in this game. I honestly, personally couldn't detect anything with any of the characters, so I've seen a few scenes more than once, but I still couldn't pick up on anything. But I will say, for anyone who is a longtime fan of Final Fantasy X, if you happen to see or hear an issue with any cutscene, please comment down below so I can actually look back on certain scenes to see where you're coming from. But at this moment, I personally did not find any issue with like the voice acting or the direction towards the voice acting. I do believe that if this game actually came out like in 2023, Twitter would just have an absolute ball. And I see there's still conversation about it here and there, but I believe the internet would just be in complete shambles about particular scenes with like Yuna and Seymour's wedding, with the age gap that they share, and then just Wakka's just incredible hatred for the Al Bhed. I know that Twitter would be crashing and possibly burning because of this game if it came out today. I don't know if this story is actually complicated or I'm just used to playing video games with like a very complex story, but there was a lot of information for me to take in that I really just could not get a grasp onto throughout my first gameplay. And just going back to certain scenes, it just really opened my eyes for what was leading up, and especially where the scene where the Faith was telling Tidus about his identity and his truth and his livelihood. I don't know why that did not click to me for the first time, but I know I was confused and incredibly heartbroken once I saw the ending of this game. I think it's very common, to say the least, that Seymour turning out to be a villain was not a surprise, and him asking for Yuna's hand in marriage to distract people of Spira, that whole scene was not a surprise. The wedding itself wasn't surprising to me, because when I was younger, whenever I watched something Kingdom Hearts related on YouTube, that would show up on the side of my screen for like suggested videos. But his suggestion of having a wedding is so crazy, because it just easily describes a news outlet in today's society. A lot of crazy things happen in this world that has not really been fully addressed, and instead of bringing it up, society likes to distract it with like celebrity and pop culture. But I think the bigger plot twist for me in this storyline was more so of Jet being the final and you know, Yuna and Riku being related, and Auron being dead, and of course Tidus's farewell, which was so don't get me started on that. My favorite scenes for me would definitely have to be the Guardians crashing the wedding. My baby Yuna, she looked so gorgeous in her wedding dress, but they did what needed to be done with that wedding, and I feel like that scene showed not only that they were her friends, but it showed like they were a family, a found family altogether. And I'm really getting to the found family tropes because of my liking for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And of course you have the iconic underwater date scene with Tidus and Yuna and them sharing their first kiss. And I feel like that really depicts the feeling of sharing a kiss with someone, especially if it's the first one. Now, before the kiss itself, we actually see Yuna being vulnerable, and she did everything she could to keep everybody happy without complaining about it, but she did had a lot to carry on her shoulders. We also see her desire of wanting to go to Tidus' version of Xanderkin, but she knows what would happen if she didn't continue the pilgrimage. She knew what would happen if she did move on with it, and it was just a lot to take in. But I really feel like Tidus kissing her definitely made her worries go away at that moment, and the colors of that scene was just so bright and mystical, and I want to say that the ending was sweet too, but it was just very bittersweet. It was the flashbacks at the very end that really got me, and I broke down, and I just remember crying my eyes out throughout the credits. It just made me reflect on the journey of a Bitsball player wanting to return home, to sacrificing for the ones that he loved, for them to be alive, and put it into that cycle. And another scene I actually do admire was Yuna sending off people to the far plane, and no matter how groundbreaking or how cringy people might think it is, it really is a beautiful scene, especially the color scheme of that scene. I think the graphics were different because the graphics tend to switch back and forth with certain scenes, but how she did it was just so graceful and magical light. But the quote that really stick to my head throughout playing that game was when Tidus was like, "When will Yuna stop dancing?" She doesn't have to dance anymore for it. Not for that, at least. Now, these cutscenes aren't my particular favorite, but I actually do want to acknowledge at least the cutscene with Tidus and Yuna just laughing out loud in a way of like coping with the things that we're dealing with. And I know a lot of people label that scene as cringe, but I mean, you know what they say, laughter is the best medicine sometimes, and stressing about it and sitting down and being sad about it doesn't help sometimes. Yes, it's okay to be sad, but I feel like that scene is just a reminder, not only to each other but like to the audience, just laugh it off. Just laugh it off. And then I also want to acknowledge the scene where everyone stepped up to Yuna Leska in regards of breaking the tradition of sacrificing people to put it into sin, when really the cycle just continued. And even though that boss fight was hard, but I really think that cutscene was just like full on phenomenal. And the standing up to her for someone who is so legendary within the traditions and things of that sort, they did it together and they got out of it together. I do want to touch on a little bit of Eternal Calm, since it's like an additional cutscene that transitions slowly into the sequel. Why did Lulu get pregnant by you know who? Why? I'm not gonna get into it. It's not my life, it's hers. But one thing Riku definitely said when it came to Yuna's character was that Yuna always does what's best for everybody else, and not once she decided to do something for herself. And it really stuck out to me, and it just made me reflect on what everything that Yuna did for everybody else. And while I'm sitting here thinking about what's to occur in the sequel, it made me sit and realize that's what I want from Yuna. I want Yuna to not only grow, because I do believe there is a 2-year time skip from the first game. I want to see her grow as a woman, a young woman, and really do things for herself, and being more confident and more powerful, and just on this journey. My personal prediction, I believe they're going to look for Tidus. That's my personal prediction for the sequel. I have no idea what goes in the sequel. I haven't touched the sequel at all quite yet, but whatever I'm getting to in the sequel, I honestly feel like it's going to be a wild ride, just like this game. Now for the $1 million questions. Do I think that this is the best Final Fantasy game ever? I personally cannot answer that. And it's not because I don't want to. It's because this is only my second main title, and I would have to play the other games to really experience everything else. And I feel like this question is something I will have to get back to you on. Would I ever play this game again? No. No, I would not. And that's only because the gameplay was just very, 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 very stressful. But I do respect it for the story that it is telling, and I do respect how phenomenal it is within the franchise. And I honestly do not plan on returning to this game. If I do come back to it, it would more likely be a couple years from now. I finished that game in February. This is June. Have not played that game since. It's been 4 months. I have not touched it at all. But I will say that those who opinionate that this is the best Final Fantasy game ever, I believe you if you do say that, because it really is a great game. It really does have like a true Final Fantasy feel to it from someone who was used to playing Kingdom Hearts before getting into Final Fantasy. You know, before I actually played Final Fantasy, I thought it was just kind of like mythical, like adventurous and like magical kind of feel, and this is what actually gives off that feeling. So it really does stick to the whole Final Fantasy trope, aesthetic feel to it. But I don't see myself coming back to this game anytime at all. Anytime soon, at least. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say never, but like, I really don't know. But don't be sad. It's not the end of the world. I will be getting into the sequel. I actually plan on playing the sequel towards the end of July, August-ish. I just need to just mentally take a break from the storyline in this game. I'm kind of taking a break from playing video games in general as it is, but once I get in a good mood to start playing video games again, I'm definitely going to be playing the sequel. How do y'all even pronounce the sequel? Is it Final Fantasy X-2? I don't know. I would just say the sequel, Final Fantasy X. But I will be playing Final Fantasy X, the sequel, Part 2. And of course, you will also be getting an essay just as you received here with this video. So this brings me to the conclusion of today's video. Do you like this game? Do you think this is the best Final Fantasy of all time? What's your favorite cutscenes, your favorite characters, your favorite songs, favorite boss fights? Let me know in the comments so we can go ahead and start a conversation about it. But thank you guys for sticking around to the end and watching this entire video essay. Again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on all social platforms. And until then, I will see you in the next video.